ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene. Good morning.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you are with us at Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.
That's right, and it's a Monday, but it's a very different Monday because this week is Christmas.
Yay, Christmas week! Merry Christmas,
It's
Gowri.
so exciting. There's Christmas, there's New Year, the long holidays coming up. It's really...
I'm just excited, actually.
Yes.
in 3 days, Christmas will be on,
In
right?
3 days, that's right. And
But you know, I can understand, even though we are excited with the Christmas spirit and hopefully certain right-wing organization won't do any harm to the spirit of Christmas.
I sense a little sarcasm there.
But some Malaysian might be a bit down, and I'm talking about our football team, Harimau Malaya. They had so much promising in the in the beginning of the second leg, Malaysia versus Thailand, but they just couldn't have that fighting spirit as much as what the Thais have. And
I guess the Thais really wanted it, probably more than the Malaysian players
and they are a young
did.
team. They are a team that on average are just 24 or younger.
And it seems they waited 12 years actually to take the Suzuki Cup back to Thailand, and we have also been waiting to bring it back, but sadly it did not happen. But like you mentioned, of course, the beginning was very promising. We were leading by 3 goals, and everyone thought, okay, that's it, like it's in our bag already, the trophy is ours. But it just towards the last minute, Thailand kind of stepped up and whacked us, and it was, everybody just started feeling down, and I think they even lost their spirit to play after that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Malaysian team is when we get it, we get it. When we lose this team, that means the whole team completely lose it. But you know, one thing that I felt I really enjoy watching Malaysia versus Thailand is, okay, partly is because of the game, but partly is because the Thai players are so damn cute.
Oh my god, I knew you were going to say that. Well, sadly, I am going to be a good football fan and tell you, Arlene, you don't watch football because of the players. You support the
Gowri.
team. But yeah, a lot of people were actually talking about the Thai players, especially the guy wearing the number 7 jersey.
Oh yeah, and they dupe him as the Cristiano Ronaldo of Thai.
He really looks like Cristiano Ronaldo. I
so
was
cute.
really shocked when I first saw him, and I hate him because he scored a very important goal.
Best. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, without him, he seems to be a very important player within the whole Thai team, even though he only shined towards the last end of the second half. But anyway, enough about Thailand. Another happy thing that I think for Malaysians that they can at least cheer, you know, is the 1,600 pandas arriving in Malaysia. Is that really?
Yes,
Is that really?
This is a panda invasion that's happening in KL and also Penang and a few other cities in Malaysia. And I know you must be really excited because you love pandas.
I love pandas. It's my favorite
But
animal.
of course, they're not real pandas.
Unfortunately.
We don't have that many, and it's impossible to bring 1,600 pandas with you traveling around the world. But this was actually made by the artist himself, and he is gonna tour the world and bring them to all the famous landmarks in every country.
So it's the 1,600 Pandas World Tour made its debut in Malaysia this Sunday morning, which was on this week or next week? I'm not
This
sure.
should be probably yesterday.
Oh, it's too bad. I miss it. I'm too
But
sad now.
I think they're also going to Penang if you still want to catch them.
Yeah, you can keep Penang to yourself. And the funny thing about the team is initiating the culture of creative conservation. So you want to conserve something, you have to be creative, like bringing 1,600 fake pandas to Malaysia.
And that gives people the awareness about the current situation of pandas, because they also have booth around. Of course, it's not just the pandas sitting there. They have information counters where people can go and learn about the current issues that the pandas are facing, especially in terms of extinction.
So Gowri, enough about panda. But you know what else that panda are good at besides being panda? Actually, not good at, bad at it.
Yeah, I was just trying to correct you there. They're not good at it. Remember the panda theory?
Yeah, the panda theory that I created. so so the panda, they are good at eating, at just sleeping, lazing around, and they are bad at sex.
That's right. Because they are just too lazy to do it.
And because of that, I think the MCMC, or the Malaysian Communication and Multimedia Commission, would love to have panda as its citizen instead of like actual Malaysians or human beings, because Malaysian MCMC actually block popular access to porn website.
And this is, of course, a bad news for all the porn lovers out there.
Which happens to be,
a lot of people.
And no, there's another survey by PornTube.
Oh, right. That's where you were going.
Pornhub, sorry.
People in Terengganu, that would be. I'm sure they have other options, other resources. But going back to what you were mentioning earlier, of course, watching it and doing it is not exactly the same. The pandas could be bad at doing it, but probably when it comes to Malaysians, they because of the laws in the country and all, where having sex is actually frowned upon, so people just resort to watching porn.
It's frowned upon if you are not married.
That's right. And now it seems they can't even watch it. So the laws are getting stricter.
But it's just RedTube, probably there are thousands more like really weird sites.
You want to give a few suggestions here? Help our listeners out.
I can contact BuzzFeed on that, and they will give a list on a really cool porn site that Malaysians can access before being blocked by the MCMC, of course. But the problem is the content. The code that. The reason why Malaysian MCMC is banning this is because besides pornography is illegal, it also contains obscene content, which would include content like child pornography, sexual degradation, and explicit sex acts. So it's pretty understandable why they do what they do.
I think they will say whatever they want to justify their actions. But at the same time, it goes back to, suppressing people's urge. Because like we mentioned earlier, it's already being frowned upon if you're not married. And people try to release that through other channels like watching, so that gets banned as well.
You know what they can do? They can just do yoga and just like be Buddhist for a while. Go to the high-end mountain and just think about peacefulness.
Are you talking about Malaysians?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
we have a lot of mountains, right? So that's the best way to control urges.
As a yoga practitioner, I must tell you that sometimes yoga kind of puts you in the mood.
Okay, I'm just like bubbling around. Anyway, okay, enough like the light news, but let's talk about something more heavier. Which is about migrant workers. Of course, later on we will talk more about the plight of migrant workers in ASEAN. But in reality, not besides just Malaysia, a lot of Southeast Asian countries, which includes Thailand, which is the country that we are going to talk about now, have harsh treatment of migrant workers, and usually migrant workers from Myanmar, mainly from this country, would have a harsh life.
And this actually is in line of the 2 men from Myanmar who will stand trial later this month for the murder of 2 British tourists that they were killed a few months back, and they have been trying to look for the culprit, and they've narrowed down to these 2 guys from Myanmar. But the real question here, which most people are worried about, is are they really the culprit, or were they just tortured into confession because the police wanted to close the case? Because that would be a serious violation on human rights.
It's really sad, like how people in Southeast Asia being treated, especially if you are not of a particular class and your life is just reduced as mere robots or workers for those who are in power. They don't really have rights.
And especially in terms of education, when certain people don't know their rights, they don't have the right knowledge, they don't know what they can actually appeal for, and they probably were just if they are really the culprits, then it's fine. But if they are not, then they need to know the ways that they can actually file for an appeal and to get the case to go on trial, so they can prove their innocence if they are innocent, if they were not really the ones.
This is what this is what was being said by Phil Robertson. He's the deputy director of the Asia division of Human Rights Watch. He slammed on the recent case of the 2 Myanmar men being charged of killing. It shows the rich Thai elite businessman suing advocates of workers' rights. And in reality, none of these cases should have been considered for prosecution at all. And the Thai government should be condemned for wasting taxpayer dollars in this effort on behalf of a rights-abusing private company. It's said that countries within Southeast Asia have very weak laws to protecting human rights. Worst would be migrant workers.
And going back to what he said about the rich Thai elite businessmen, I think even last week we reported about Cambodia, how they were suffering because of the ruling elite. And this seems to be the problem in most countries, in Asia particularly, that we always have this mentality of this group of elite people who are ruling the country, who are governing the country, and it seems that they have the certain privileges that other people don't have, especially if they are a migrant worker. Then things get worse from there.
Besides Malaysia, Thailand also got tier 3 in terms of the trafficking in persons report. If you remember, Malaysia was condemned for not putting enough attention on human trafficking. The same is happening in Thailand. Burmese, Cambodian and Thai men are subject to forced labor on Thai fishing boats that travel throughout Southeast Asia and beyond. Some men remain at sea for up to several years, are paid very little and are expected to work 18 to 20 hours per day for 7 days a week, or are threatened and physically beaten. That's really, really sad and dangerously irresponsible.
And of course, this kind of conditions can also be very dangerous, very exhausting, and they are often at the mercy of their abusive employers, which is of course pretty much similar to what's happening in Malaysia. And just to add on to that, our police actually came up with this.
Our police is in Malaysia?
Yeah, sorry. Malaysian police actually said that it's illegal for the employers to confiscate their workers' passport, and they encourage these migrant workers to lodge police reports in the case that any employers takes your passport away. But of course, it's not that simple as well. Like this, there's always a threat and intimidation.
Or irresponsible police officers. Sometimes they are just probably they're too irresponsible or lazy. It can be any other condition, but they don't really take the rights or the issues of migrant workers seriously. That's the reason why we are one of the worst in terms of treatment of foreigners or migrant workers.
And it seems the police, like you were just mentioning, even in this case of Thailand, they rarely take the complaints by migrant workers seriously. They just brush it off because it just doesn't matter to them. You're not from this country. You're not someone of importance. You're not from the ruling elite or anything. So why should I care about you and the problems that you're facing?
So, enough about migrant workers. We will discuss more about it. There's a lot to discuss about the issues of migrant workers and their plights in Southeast Asia. Moving from migrant workers to just Malaysians.
Yes.
Again, back to Malaysians. Of course, earlier on we talked about porn sites being blocked. Too bad for you guys, Malaysians. But another area is there's still like a light of hope when it comes to people fighting causes against Malaysians who are spewing racism and bigotry towards other races or other people. And we are talking about this effort called #Kami Juga 25, Kami Juga 25.
And this was
we are all 25.
Spearheaded by Azrul Muhammad Khalib. And he is of course a co-author with Malay Mail Online, and he's also one of the co-founders of Malaysians for Malaysia.
And always come to he's always here at Duran ASEAN to share his view.
So this actually is in line with him speaking up against all these racial bigots, because there are, of course, a few groups of Malaysians, as we already know. There's one group of people who are the extremists, and we can probably call them the bigots, who only have one way of looking at things. And then there's also this other group who wants a moderate Malaysia. They want a fair and equal Malaysia. They want equal rights for everybody, and they want all of us to come together as Malaysians. And the tricky part is to find the common ground here, because how do you get these two groups to meet? And that's something wonderful that Azrul has been trying so hard to work on, to get everyone to that understanding that Malaysia is not under threat. Even the religion in this country is not under attack. We all respect each other, and we're all Malaysians, and all we want is to live with each other, and we want a peaceful country.
This is a beautiful sentence that he shared with the Star. He said that he sees heritage as something that we can celebrate together collectively, rather than it belonging to one ethnicity. And he makes sense, because when it comes to diversity, we are actually one of the best example of how people of different races, different heritage, different background can live together without ending up with violence or riot. Of course, the last riot that we ever had, racial riot, was in 1969. Since then, people have somehow moved on with life, and I think we should just move on. I mean, of course, we should look back to the past and learn, get some lessons learned from there, but at the same time, we should celebrate what is our strength, which is diversity.
And he also brought up another important point when it comes to our current government, or even the opposition, when he said, why is it that when you criticize or oppose a government policy or question something, you're immediately being labeled as anti-Malaysia or anti-Malay? Because by right, as a citizen of the country, if you're not happy with any policy that the government has implemented, you have every right to voice it out, every right to question, because at the end of the day, that policy is made for you. So why do we resort to labeling instead of calling for a dialogue and actually talking things out?
I'm totally on the same page as Azrul when it comes to this matter, because I mean, I have some of my heritage is Malay, and I totally appreciate that heritage of mine. I think is amazing to have Malay heritage, but at the same time, I agree, because when it comes to the betterment of this society, policies doesn't mean that it relates to your heritage. Like, for example, affirmative action, it should be seen as a policy that they're supposed to somehow liften up certain socioeconomic condition of Malaysians in general, or of course specific ethnicity, because of the historical discrimination that happened to certain ethnicity. But at the same time, it shouldn't be viewed as just because you're against certain affirmative action, you are against that particular race. You just see things in a more pragmatic way, for example, or in a way that you believe would benefit in another policy measure. So I totally agree with him.
And at the end of the day, it's very important for citizens in this country to stand up and speak up, because we don't want to just keep quiet on things that matter, and then the government will just keep going. And of course, when I say government, I'm not pinpointing anybody. It can be anybody, whoever that's in charge right now in any country at all. When your citizens are not happy, they have every right to speak up. And what's also interesting here is that the article says, who picked Azrul to speak up? Of course, nobody. He made the decision because he was tired of whatever that's happening in the country. So he spoke up, and now he's getting people to join him. So if you guys want to join in as well, you can always look for the petition that we have up on our Duran ASEAN. It's on our Facebook pages as well. So sign the petition and see where it goes from here.
And you can always post a photo and comment and hashtag kami juga 25. Or is there an English version of the hashtag? I think it's just Malay, right?
It is. There's some translations, but I think it's better to just do the kami juga 25, because we are Malaysians, and Malay is our national language, so let's be proud of that.
uh, okay, so from Malaysia, we move on to the bigger picture, which is Southeast Asia. Did you know that there's such thing called ASEAN Integrity Community?
Yes, I do, but only after reading this news.
But it's not really something that any government in Southeast Asia are even suggesting or implementing. Is actually what Transparency International are calling upon Southeast Asian government to set up. ASEAN Integrity Community is something interesting because of what is really a huge problem in Southeast Asia. One word, corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it seems that almost 50% of people in the 6 ASEAN countries believe that corruption has increased, while only a third of that people said that the government's rights to fight corruption have actually been effective. And this is according to the 2013 Global Corruption Barometer, a public opinion survey by Transparency International.
I actually felt the suggestion by Transparency International quite interesting. You know why? Because when it comes to certain action-oriented focus of ASEAN, it seems the only thing that they are pushing forward vigorously is economic community, which is fine. But with economic community, you need to solve a lot of problems like corruption, like how you treat your migrant workers. So besides, this is just my weird suggestion, is besides the ASEAN Integrity Community, maybe ASEAN can have a ASEAN Migrant Workers Community or Labor Rights Community.
I don't think that's a weird suggestion. I think it's a very valid suggestion because that has been a major issue in this region. And of course, economy is always important. The infrastructure in every country is important. But what's also important is the human rights, the transparency in every country, because you want people to believe in you. And like I just mentioned in the survey just now, if 50% of people in your country don't believe that the corruption has decreased, that the government's efforts are working, then how can you carry on with other efforts that you're planning to implement in the country or in the region itself if this corruption thing is not sorted out in the first place?
Totally agree with you on that. And because of that, way to go. Transparency International, just push forward. Reduce corruption is Southeast Asia is one of the worst, and if we want to make our AEC a reality, we should fill in other blanks for ASEAN community. Maybe they should have ASEAN blank community, so we just fill in the space if we feel that it is a problem that ASEAN needs to address. And another area that ASEAN needs to address is, of course, the way it treats its minorities. And I'm talking about a news that was reported by Mail Online. Montagnards leave jungle hideouts to apply for asylum in Cambodia. That's interesting.
So we actually reported about these Montagnards a few weeks back, and it seems they have actually been hiding for a very long time in the jungles because they are so afraid to come out, so afraid to face the authorities.
I like the word. It's so exotic. It's so French.
Well, sadly, they're not living an exotic life. They are living a very miserable life, and they have just come out from their jungle hideout to actually apply for asylum in Cambodia. And this is, of course, is being assisted by a UN team that has come forward to help them, to get in touch with them, and to give them what they need, which is to provide an asylum and also probably a refugee card or something, so they can, start over from there.
For those who do not know what is Montagnards, of course, obviously, it's a French term. That's why I say it is exotic, very French. It's referring to the patchwork of mainly Christian ethnic minority groups who live in Vietnam mountainous Central Highlands region. Many of the Montagnards groups practice forms of evangelical Protestantism, which puts them at odds with Vietnam's communist rulers who tightly control religion. Who knows, right? I mean, in countries like Malaysia, Singapore, and Myanmar, religion, and also Brunei, religion becomes a tool for government to alienate those who do not have religion or those who don't profess a certain kind of religion. But in Vietnam, atheism is used to alienate those who do not believe, who believe in religion, which is really sad because you would assume people who do not believe in religion would probably have more sense, but that's not reality
Well, that's
at
not
all.
always the case. And also, if I remember correctly, in Laos, actually, they're trying to get the Christians to convert back to animism.
That's
So we have a lot of
so creative. Thank you, Thailand,
Christians,
Laos government.
We have going back to atheism. We have even animism that is still in play in Southeast Asia. And
I mean, when you look at the bigger picture, like, it's the problem is no longer about religion. It's about how governments are using its dominant power.
and they're using it as a tool as well to control the people. And
It's
to-
either ideology, it's either religion or the lack of religion, or in this case, animism for the Lao government, to somehow control society to believe in a certain ideas that the government wants the society to believe in. And it's really sad because then you alienate the minorities.
Yes, and also it seems these people have been suffering from other illnesses as well because they
The
have been-
Montak Nats.
Yes, because they've lived in the jungle for so long and they have no a proper roof above their head, no protection whatsoever, and even it seems that the local Cambodian authorities even denied them to access help the Montagnards who are from the Jarai ethnic minority group. But of course, the UN has stepped in now to help them, and hopefully things won't be so bad anymore.
So that's all for our news today, and thanks for listening to our ABC News.
And of course, you can like us on our Facebook page, you can follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
So with that, listen to us later on for our ABC Focus. We will talk more about migrant workers in Southeast Asia. And of course, besides listening to us at DurianASEAN.com, you can always go to TuneIn app and your smartphone and search for Durian ASEAN.